on the Fringe with Dan RadioStyle. Hope everybody out there is having themselves a great day. If you're anything like me, you've probably got a lot of that sort of bad feelings, bad mojo, nervousness, anxiety, not really happy about how things are playing out. I will say there's something interesting that's floating around out there right now, and it almost immediately got debunked. And my brother had shared it with me, and I kind of started looking into it, and then literally had to go to the third page of Google searches, or search results, to finally find the actual source of the information. And oddly, the source of the information disagreed with the debunking, which I thought was very interesting. So I immediately had to follow up with my brother and say, hey, I think there's something that might actually be at work here that may be good news and might actually go towards some crazy talk that's going around. I'm going to talk about that for sure. I've also got some positive news that's happening right now on this front. I do believe in this country. I believe in where we're trying to go, and I believe that something is trying to dissuade or persuade or take away our opportunity to have that freedom. And I think this was always known, and I think that's the thing that's been bothering me. I don't know about you guys, but it's been bothering me where it's like everyone knew. I mean, Trump had been talking about this potentiality for months. And of course, everyone said he was crazy, he was nuts, he was making things up. And of course, here we are, once again, what Trump says actually kind of played out. In fact, he's one of the few presidents that's actually done a lot of the things he said he would do. So here we are facing something that everybody knew was going to happen, and what's baffling to so many of us, or what it seems like, is no one's doing anything about it. Now, that's not true. Obviously, there's legality issues going on. There's obviously some stories we're going to share here in a moment. There's obviously recounts that are going to occur. Supreme Court might likely get involved. Now, I do think that media, or deep state, however you want to call them, is going to call the election here at some point. And they're going to call states at some point that probably maybe are going to have to get checked legally. Maybe this, again, we're going to see how this all plays out. I'm not calling anything, and I'm not saying anything more than I think there's a lot of people that have questions about what is happening. There's poll watchers aren't even allowed to be in. There's all sorts of things. Now, to get started, Breitbart put out an interesting article that talks about how, because of the way things played, because of how these mail-in ballots work, the concept of the secret ballot is gone. Gone. Because on the outside of the envelope, it pretty much says who you are. So it's no longer a vote that's secret. And one of the scary things to most of us is the thing called cancel culture, is the thing that so many of us saw that sit on the right side of the aisle or in the center of the aisle, either way, but not on the freaking extreme left, is that we got attacked, we got called names. There was a whole slew of things that happened against anybody that supported Trump, and for the most part, it was rejoiced by the other side because they hated Trump. That is the freakiest world, and that is where I'm just at the very first steps, like, wow, like I can't even believe this is where we're at, but apparently this is where we're at. So the idea of not being able to hide who you're voting for is pretty scary. And this article, gets into it, a lot of reason, and I think for the most part, without having to beat a dead horse, there's no question about it. The end of the secret ballot will be destroyed by the mail-in vote. So again, now one thing that's kind of good, kind of interesting is Lindsey Graham won, and I was really wondering about this one because Lindsey Graham, although he's a hawk, he was one of the ones I always questioned as maybe not being on the up and up. And I always kind of hoped and wanted to see him sort of step forward. Now, here's the question I've got, because I know a lot of these senators felt, or at least some of them have come out and said so, that Trump and his gruffness kind of made things difficult for them to a large extent. I think McConnell did an amazing job really kind of balancing those two worlds. And I think Lindsey Graham was a pretty staunch supporter and even at times said he disagreed. So I think he walked that landmine pretty well, or that minefield pretty well. But one thing that's very cool is Lindsey Graham is vowing to donate $500,000 to Trump's legal defense fund. And that's amazing, and that's awesome. And that's one of the things, if any of you guys are out there and they're asking for money, this is why. There's going to be a lot of legal fees and legal stuff that's going to happen over the next month or so. Again, how this plays out, I think a lot of us, the hope that we had, I think it will play out. Now, I've got some information, again, that we're going to end up with that I think will make you at least go, because it is worthy. Another article that came out, Trump promises to challenge all states where Biden is fraudulently declared winner. Now, fraudulently, obviously a catchy term. Obviously, there's a lot of syntax around that, right? You got to put that in asterisks or something. But this is basically what's going to be happening. He's going to be censored for the most part if he tries to say anything anywhere, unless he gets on the mainstream news. But we've even seen in a lot of cases people are pulling away the second he starts talking. There is an obvious attempt to silence Trump. And even the comments that came from the peanut gallery afterwards, it's just like, so it is unprecedented beyond all words. Are we surprised it's 2020? You had to expect this. This is kind of what I think a lot of us in our hearts sort of figured was going to happen, but then there was that other part of us that said, dude, he should win this by a landslide, though. And I've got some evidence of that as well. It's interesting how this is playing out. I think that's the key thing to really get people to start to pay attention to. How this is playing out, the way it's censorship has happened, the way certain states were called super early and then almost even had to be uncalled, but now who knows? We'll see. But of course, legally or in the courts will be decided for sure. And votes are magically being found. I know maybe isn't Lucky Charms going on, but sure seems like it at times. There was video of people pulling ballots out of these boxes, and it was the next day after the election, and they were still taking mail-in ballot votes. Anyway, you see videos, and then nobody's really talking because once people realize, oh, shoot, we've been caught, they just silence up, and you don't hear anything at all. Now, something that was super interesting, and I think this actually happened, yesterday, but there's some thread, I guess, a lot of stuff going around how a Democrat conference call was apparently leaked, or parts of it were being live leaked, and just tears, yelling, finger pointing, backstabbing. Apparently, it was quite a sight to see. This Erica Werner, apparently at Erica Werner, very convenient. But yeah, Spanberger on the Dems caucus call. We lost races we shouldn't have lost. Defund police almost cost me my race because of an attack ad. Don't say socialism ever again. Need to get back to basics. And apparently he was yelling. Erica also started to share, if we run this race again, we will get effing torn apart again in 2022, Spanberger says. Pelosi comes back, and she even disagrees, and she says they won the House and the presidency, but we have a mandate, Pelosi says, before getting off the call. So again, also they follow up with, also earlier in the call, Debbie Markersel Powell, who lost her race, was crying and mentioned how people can't pronounce her name and said, stop being negative on Twitter. Yeah, I totally just messed her name up too. The Powell part, I'm sure I got right. Over here, Jeffries comes back on to tell people to stop leaking and that reporters aren't your friends. So now all of a sudden, the Democrats, reporters aren't their friends, right? The second ago, they were all their friends, but now they're not. Jayapal is telling Jeffries to find the leakers. Some of my colleagues are literally live leaking our internal Dem caucus right now to CNN, The Hill, NBC, Politico, etc. I've gotten texts from 3 different reporters asking me to live leak juicy details to them. No, we, Dems and the media, need to stop this nonsense. Continues. It just keeps going as Pascrell now calling out Schumer. Pelosi's done an amazing job, but where's Schumer in all of this? Says Pelosi has one hand tied behind her back. Rashida Tlaib saying, before we make painful statements, we need to wait and see how the numbers come down. Feels like I'm being asked to be quiet, and we need to appeal to certain people, and that's not right. So again, there was a lot of discussions around how this whole call played out. DCCC Chair Bustos tells House Democrats, per person on the call, I'm furious. Something went wrong here across the entire political world. Bustos continued, our polls, Senate polls, government polls, presidential polls, Republican polls, public polls, turnout modeling, and prognosticators all pointed to one political environment. That environment never materialized. She says confident Dems will pick up GA07. A lot of discussions around this did not play out at all the way the Democrats apparently thought it would. Now, one primary reason I'm going to show in a second is there was a lot more support for President Trump than they realized. One of the other problems they have is even in popular vote, right now it's close to 50-50, right? There is a lot of people that do not support the other side right now. And there's a lot of people that do not support the other side right now. Very few, I think a lot of people support Trump, and that's one of the biggest differences. Supporting of Biden, it was more a vote against Trump for a lot of people. Biden has not exactly proven himself to be the best candidate ever by any means. In fact, probably one of the all-time weakest candidates in all time. And if he actually won or wins, will just be amazing how someone like that was able to get into office, and if he'll even make it to the inauguration. So the Dems are upset. They've caused a lot of chaos. They blame Trump and all the division, but really a lot of the division came from their side and their hatred. People on the right don't generally hate. They may disagree, they may argue, they may debate. But outside of that, politics is not everything that matters to them. It's not personal. To the Democrats, it is everything. It is personal. It's their lives. They live politics. So it's very, very different, and it becomes a very emotionally based argument. And in that, a lot of relationships were hurt. And this is one of the things that they're now having to live with. So on the most important news, I don't know where it came up, but I got two really cool videos. How can Trump possibly lose the state of Arizona with this sort of incredible enthusiasm among his supporters? 96 miles of Trump support for president, or for supporters for President Trump. 96 miles of support for this individual. Let's check this out. I'm going to turn the sound down because gosh knows if that's actually somehow copywritten or something like that. But again, this was done with drone footage, obviously. Look at just these miles and miles and miles and miles of cars. Miles of Trump supporters. These are Trump supporters in Arizona. Thank God it's not summertime. All these poor people would probably not make it. But this is what happened in Arizona, a place that's currently very contested. You couldn't get this many people probably to come out to show support for Biden, yet you can get that for all these other people, for Trump. Now over here, we've got another interesting, I'm going to keep the video sound off on this one too, just for good reasons, but this is very short. But you can just see, again, they basically blocked a freeway. So I had heard a story that people were peeved that Trump supporters were blocking freeways, and I was like, huh. And at first I thought like rallying, and I'm like, oh, in cars. Yeah, that actually kind of makes sense. But I'm not saying it's right. I'm just saying this is the support that happened. And this particular one here was, where was this? This was a Garden State, New Jersey. So this was New Jersey. Over here we've got Arizona for miles and miles and miles. There is a large amount of people that support this guy. A huge amount of people. And you've possibly on the left have called them deplorables, have called them chumps, have called them all sorts of names. And you claim that you want to be able to be the leader of them, but none of us probably feel all that much like we can trust you. And a lot of us don't really want to learn how to speak Chinese at this point of our lives, frankly. I know a couple words, she, and some other fun stuff, but outside of that, my pronunciation's horrible. And I'm not going to make it. I don't think I'm going to make it. So we'll see. That's a Chinese person anyways. Portland protesters target House of Commissioner who voted against defunding the police. Now, this is just to remind people that what's going on in Portland is very, very interesting. One, Portland is a completely hyper-partisan place. It's completely blue. It's as blue gets. It is oxygen-less blood blue. It is dark, dark blue. And you're noticing people are still protesting, still upset. Now they're going after Wheeler, which frankly I'm totally in agreement with, just from the standpoint of he was the one that allowed them to protest for over 100 days, and now that they're actually mad at him, kind of sort of ironic, I guess, is the only thing I think that's funny about it. It's not okay. Violence is never okay. Never, ever. But this is how things play out. When you let criminal behavior happen, they basically feel like they've gotten rewarded for their criminal behavior, and they will continue to do it. So here's an example of a place that is completely on the left, completely progressively left, and yet still has people burning down buildings or at least causing damage, beating people up, those kinds of things. Never happy, are they? This is where the left progressive Biden, Kamala, wants to take our country. to this location. I don't think it's going to work. We'll see. Now, I want to talk about the thing that I was teasing up front, and I think this is huge. And a lot of people have, quote, debunked this. So right off the bat, I'm going to say there was all sorts of potential debunking that's come out around this. And that was my first thought. And that is the idea of the ballots having a watermark on them. And there was this discussion how the CCIS put water markings on the ballots. And then everybody came out and said ballots are state controlled. This is not true, that has nothing to do with any of this government stuff. There's no way they could have done that. That's a bunch of hooey. So then I went to cisa.gov/sites/defaults, blah, blah, blah. You get the point. Now, CISA, is Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, government agency. Here's the mail-in voting election integrity safeguards. These are the safeguards that were put in place by the CISA, the Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency. I know I'm being redundant, but sort of for a reason. These were supposedly put in place, from my understanding, in November of 2019 because, one, they had the first election of the 2016, and they saw shenanigans. Then they had the 2018 election, and they'd locked down some of the shenanigans, but they saw some additional new shenanigans, and so they created additional security measures. Now, just to cover them, ballot packages and envelopes. Many states coordinated with USPS, so it just has to do with, how it's shipped. Signature attestation. In many states, ballot packages are not signed, but voter attestation under penalty of perjury that they are the person who filled out the ballot. There's signature verification. There's voter validation. There's voter authentication. There is a cure process. There is ballot style codes. Most ballots have proprietary style codes, such as timing marks, code channels, or QR codes. If the codes are not recognized by the voting machines, the ballot is rejected. So those are kind of easy to fake. You can copy a QR code and get the exact same thing. Ballot paper specifications. Most ballots are printed on a specific type of paper. If the paper does not match the specifications in length, paper weight, or opacity, the voting machine will reject the ballot. Makes me think about some of those Sharpie ones, just wondering. And finally, ballot watermarks. Some ballots have watermarks indicating that the ballot is authentic. Watermarks are specific to each election and confirm the ballot was printed by an approved printing authority. There was a lot of discussions around how maybe China might possibly be interested in printing ballots. And this was actually one of the things I was wondering about, if they were going to put some sort of marking or some sort of way to authenticate, because they do it with money. They do it with a lot of documents from banks and whatnot, is they'll do watermarking. They'll do certain things where if you look at the light differently, it's kind of hard to duplicate that. They don't copy. You really have to print them on there. And in some cases, I think they're printed in layers even. So there's a complexity to creating these. So when people say that is not true, it's a bunch of hooey, well, actually, no. From CISA.gov, that's actually, this is true. They have watermarks. Now, it says some ballots. My understanding, and this is where we'll see how this plays out, but my understanding is a lot of the contested states, a lot of the concerned states, the states that we're currently waiting on, frankly, probably about 10 of them or so, they sent these ballots out to. And apparently, a lot of people didn't know about this. That might have been one of the concerns. So there was the theory pushed out that maybe Trump was saying, no, stop the vote, knowing full well that whatever he says, the opposite will be pushed by the other side. Always. I mean, again, this is one of those things where you know for sure that's what's going to happen. So Trump says, stop the count. And we've got a number of cases where people said, all right, well, we'll count those votes in the morning. There's like 6,000 left. We'll count them in the morning, come back tomorrow, and we'll count them. And then, sure enough, you wake up the next morning and, we did them last night, sorry. Anyway, yeah, they all went to Biden. Oh, I know, 100% of them. I know, what are the odds? Pretty crazy. It's strange. Everybody loves Biden. So that kind of thing was happening for sure. And apparently, some of these ballots may not have come from where they were supposed to come from, but by making everybody finish the count, by pushing this forward, that allows the lawsuit stuff to begin. Once the lawsuit stuff has happened, which it is, Trump is he's already filed lawsuits on a number of states. But once the lawsuits happen, then they're allowed to start to look at the ballots. Well, the second they can go through the ballots and start to realize, especially in the states where the CISA rules were followed, they will find that a number of these ballots may not have that appropriate watermarking, which would imply that they were not printed from a reliable source, which should call into question the results, because only real votes should go out. Now, we've also seen in a lot of states is the number of registered voters and voter turnout. Oddly, voter turnout was over 100%. That would make one wonder how that happens, considering registered voters are the only ones that were supposed to receive ballots. Yet somehow that didn't occur. So there's a lot of questions. There's a number of people that have wondered if some of votes have occurred for people that are not alive. We're hearing all sorts of stories. There is reports in all sorts of different places talking about all sorts of different crazy. Now, I don't know what's real and I don't know what's not real. And I don't think many of us do. But I think one thing that we've been assured is that, one, Trump's going to make sure that legal things start to happen. Two, that the courts are ultimately going to decide this. And that was one of the main reasons why they pushed through Amy Coney Barrett into the Supreme Court, because they knew already that this was going to be a contentious election. And I think, I think they were expecting to be able to fill that seat right after, and they didn't think the Republicans would dare fill it as quickly. And maybe they saw it as a bit of a shooting themselves in the foot if the Republicans did fill it, because it probably did cause a little bit of anti-Trump movement from some, for sure. But that being said, it was also a very important step that was made to guarantee the security and safety of this election, at least to the best of our ability. I say ours like I'm a part of this somehow. I mean, I guess I've been communicating to my best of my ability. But that being said, we're going to see how these things play out. We're going to see once they finally call all the states, which is bound to happen any day. I'm truly kind of expecting to hear that, and I'm preparing for it. And I mean, literally, this is just so weird how divided we are as a people, how this is not going to get any better. And I don't see how people that are currently voted into office are going to do anything to make it better, because they've kind of been some of the most biggest agitators to begin with. And I know they call all of us agitators, so okay, sure, I guess I'm an agitator too, but they're also agitators. They're doing the exact same thing. They're being grumpy towards us, and then we're just kind of being grumpy towards them. And, again, grumpy creates grumpy. But that being said, it's not okay, and we should be able to be allowed to be grumpy towards our elected officials. And there's a lot of distrust that I think is currently being felt by a lot of people. I think our answers will come. I don't want to say I have hope, because it's not even that. I'm truly just preparing for the worst, and then we'll see what happens. Looks like we've got the Senate, but again, who knows? Seriously, who knows? But there is a major effort to impact this election. It is everything matters on this election. This election is the election of all time. So I guess to say the easiest way, more information will be coming, but without a doubt, we are going to be kind of left hanging. We're going to be in this strange anticipatory kind of feeling, this anxiety feeling. We're going to be left in this state for, it seems, a period of time. And then it might, when finally an announcement comes out, hopefully Trump comes out right around there and says, hey, look, here's what's going on. But I've noticed this has just been a tricky time. I don't even turn the news on right now, because I don't like, one, it's just all deep state media. Even Fox News is impossible to watch right now. It's just impossible to watch. I've literally went into my other room on the cable box that I can't seem to figure out how to turn off. I just changed it to another channel because I don't want the cable company to think I have Fox News on. I don't want to reward them at all. So I put the cooking channel on because I love cooking. Cooking's fun. So that's the channel that's left on in my one that I can't turn off. This is ridiculous right now. So we need to find the best information we can, and you're possibly going to have to dig for some of it yourself. I'm telling you, if you're going to any of the Main Street media stuff, you're definitely just loading yourself up with doom and gloom, and there's no hope, and it's definitely Biden, and maybe it is. Again, I'm not saying Trump's going to win this. I don't think we have this in the bag at all, but I find it impossible to believe there's not like contingency plans that are already in motion. And I think what we're seeing with Giuliani and other stuff is just the tip of the iceberg. I think there's got to be a whole mess of stuff that's happening under the scenes. We'll see how it plays out. again, just crazy times. It's 2020. This year is just unbelievable how all the way, almost start to finish, we have just managed to have one incredible year. Wow. We'll see how it plays out. Again, stay focused on just trying to unite as best we can. I think right now we've just got to get through this. So find the ones that you feel you can unite with. And I'm kind of, I'm simmering down some of the over-anxiety. People on the left right now are just I don't understand why you guys don't just accept the vote. And it's just like, we don't believe that it's true. And they're like, I don't know why you would think that. That's just because Trump has said, and it's just, there's a programming that has happened, blah, blah, blah. And apparently there's maybe a programming that's happened on us. And we're like, no way, this is true. So again, I'm not sure whose programming is going to win in the end, but I definitely know there's two separate sets of programming working right now, and we will see how this all plays out. It is going to be an exciting month, to say the least. And exciting in probably all the wrong ways, but we'll see how it plays out. Again, I don't know what else to say regarding it. I love you guys. Where we go one, we go all. It's on the Fringe with Dan RadioStyle.